Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley, Gorilla Girl filmmaker, lunar goddess, and cinephile.
And I'm your co-host John Thomas, ghost hunter, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and meta pals? In today's episode, we'll be taking a trip into dark, desolate forests, mucky swamplands, murky waters, and of course, New Jersey. Today, we're diving into the world of cryptids. We also have two special guests joining us today. Who? Stay tuned and find out.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more.
And I keep forgetting that I bring us back all the time now.
You do bring us back. Bring us back, John. Bring us back.
Come back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Friendly neighborhood smartass John Thomas here. Hi.
Hi, John.
Like Ashley said, we do have some special co-hosts as well today. Lila Kelley is coming back. Hello.
Welcome back, Lila.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
And also new to the 3Haunted show, special guest Bodhi Werner of Mother Son Productions. Welcome.
Why, thank you.
Welcome, Bodhi.
Happy to be here.
How you doing?
Yay.
I am ready for spooky, supernatural, crazy stuff.
Heck yeah.
Mucky forests in Jersey.
Yes, of course.
Well, we are so happy to have you here.
I am so happy to be there and here at the same time in this virtual world that we live in.
Magic.
Yes,
That sounded very meta.
I'm taking you to a place here and there at the same time. Where am
And
I?
yet nowhere.
Yes, all at once.
So one might say it's like esoteric. I don't know. I'm going to work on that. Digital-teric. Yeah, I know. John's just cringing at me.
Got the whole spectrum of emotions already. We got some raunchy humor going on. We got some cringe, spooktastic.
I feel like raunchy and cringe just go hand in hand.
They are all on the same spectrum. You know.
They're best friends. So tell us about yourself, Bodhi.
Well, I'm a indie filmmaker and a writer. I just published a sci-fi horror novel, NØRTH PØRT 1999. And my screenplay on a totally different genre, nonfiction, just got selected for Catalyst. So those of you listening right now, hopefully I have won by the time you hear this, the screenplay competition. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed.
For you. Yeah. We've got it crossed for you. We hope you win too. I have had the pleasure of reading the book it's based on, and phenomenal book. So, yay.
Yes, and I know that my mother would really appreciate me reminding you how helpful you've been. Ashley, for you guys out there, has helped my mother, Claire Cooley, hone her memoir, and it is a really intense, beautiful story, and I'm lucky to have been part of adapting it into a screenplay. And Ashley really kicked ass, giving us feedback on it through the writing process, and she's a great team player.
Aw, you're making me blush. Don't stop. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so the topic of today, thank you, by the way. The topic of today is cryptids. So let's just jump into it, because this is just like a weird, different kind of topic, but I absolutely love it. So when you hear cryptids, what is the first thing that comes to mind for you guys?
Mothman. Absolutely Mothman. Hands down. I don't know what it is. Mothman is number one for me.
She's been waiting for this one. Trust me.
I've been so excited.
All right. I have to know. Tell me about Mothman. Because I just know, like, the high level, but I feel like you've got more for me. I could see you've got more for me.
So I do. So, the first reported sighting of Mothman was on November 12th, 1966. So pretty much the story goes is that grave diggers were working in the cemetery and just saw this massive creature. It was white-winged and about 6 or 7 feet tall with bright red eyes. And past that, there were about 8 sightings in the span of 3 days after that first claim. So it was just boom, 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 like all at once. People were reporting this weird creature with these glowing eyes. And I always feel it's glowing eyes, no matter what cryptid you read about. Maybe that's just a trick of the light. Maybe that is actual glowing eyeballs, but they're always glowing eyes.
So were all of these like encounters or sightings, were they all at night? Or is that the idea?
I would assume that they would all be at night. I wasn't able to get exact timestamps from the sightings.
Oh no, I was just curious
Yeah.
if they said, because of the glowing eyes. I wasn't sure. Like, is it literally eyes that are glowing? You know, just day, night, whatever, or is this like a reflection of eyes? You know what I mean? Because it's nighttime. So I was just curious.
Investigate.
Exactly.
I am. My brain's like, oh, I gotta know. So
Gotta do that deep dive.
So is this contemporary? Like, do people still see Mothman? Are there still sightings? Do you know?
I'm not sure about any recent sightings, recent being like 20 years or so, however you define recent. Yeah, but I know that there was the issue with the Silver Bridge in December of 1967. So that was when there were 46 casualties as a result of a failed eye-bar joint in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And it's theorized, conspiracy theory, however you want to phrase that, that somehow Mothman has like this connection to the failed joint bar on the bridge, but there hasn't been any like evidence for that. It's just all speculation, which I think is really fascinating.
Right, like I think somebody had actually seen Mothman before the bridge collapsed and they were on the bridge, or getting ready to be on the bridge. And then, yeah, so they kind of said, oh, Mothman did it.
Richard Gere said that. So
Yes.
everybody believed him,
Yeah.
of course.
Yes.
I actually have been to Point Pleasant in West Virginia and seen the Mothman Festival. Yes, I can't say that I went there just for that. It was a coincidence, but I went to the town.
That's a happy coincidence.
That is a
though.
very good
So,
coincidence.
life-size Mothman replicas and Mothman swag, and they have a whole street fair and I think a statue in town of like Mothman. So they're super into it. They're leaning in hard. They love it there.
Yeah, they embrace it.
Yeah, I think that that's super interesting to see is like there's these tragedies that's associated with this cryptid, with this being, but it's still celebrated and it still brings in income and helps the economy in West Virginia because it is a tourist type of thing to look at, to go see the statue, to go to these festivals. So I think that West Virginia, they just make the most of it and kind of turn tragedy into something good.
It kind of like is. I know it's completely different, but it almost reminds me of when I went to Roswell. Like just how they embrace this, you know, this is a crash site and the aliens, and that should be terrifying, right? And it's now embraced and it's part of the tourism. They're just like, yeah, come see our alien stuff and come visit the site where it crashed. And it just, I thought that was really neat to see a town embrace something that was originally terrifying. And now it's just like, it's part of who we are. And honestly, when I was doing research on cryptids, I found a lot of places do that. And it's not right when it happens. So it's not like, okay, someone's making it up to increase tourism. It's just these towns that have gotten used to this creature or the supernatural folklore are like, well, let's embrace it so it doesn't terrify us. We're just going to accept it. And then they monetize on it.
Yeah, it's their main export over in Point Pleasant. their main tourist attraction.
There you go.
All right, what about you, Johnny John? When you hear cryptids, what do you think of?
I mean, obviously, being here from Colorado and being surrounded by mountains, pretty much, Bigfoot.
Okay.
Who hasn't heard about Bigfoot?
For you, like with Bigfoot, what do you believe in with Bigfoot?
I don't know. I'm on the fence about Bigfoot. I'm not sure if I actually believe it's out there, but there's got to be something out there that somebody's seeing. Because, I mean, they're still reporting this. Like, there was a report in 2009, I think, was the latest. I'm sure there was more. But, like, when I was looking up, September 1st, somebody in Rifle, Colorado had actually seen. This lady was driving. It was early in the morning. She was driving to work. And she had coffee. Obviously, she's trying to wake up, go to work, drinking her coffee, but she still felt groggy. So she pulled over to the side of the road, got out of the car for some fresh air, and she noticed like there was movement in the meadow kind of next to the road, and immediately thought of a bear because, well, you're in the woods. And she's like, then it stood up on two legs and its arms were down to the side like a person. So she's like, this is not a bear. And she said, this is the funny part. She said it actually had large breasts.
Oh.
So it was a female Bigfoot, I guess.
Female
don't know.
Bigfoot.
And there you go. With
I
big
mean,
boobs.
it's, you know, if Bigfoots have been big feet, if big feet have been sighted for hundreds and thousands of years, I mean, it would make sense that they're either one, immortal, or two,
right,
they're propagating. In which case, if they're mammalian, that would probably, they follow our rules of species procreation. But I don't know that. I'm just going out on a limb here. And so I would think that, like, yeah, there probably should be some big feet women to counterpart the, you know, Bigfoot men.
It's only natural, of course. When you have a herd of big feet, there's going to be some big boobs in there.
Big boobs.
Yes.
I mean, it makes sense. Bigfoot, big boob. But and maybe that's what the women should, the like female of the species should be called. You have your Bigfoot, those are the males, and then big boobs, those are the females.
You're so immature.
Hard to argue with logic.
I'm so immature. I mean, I would never disagree with that. I'm so maturely immature. So the one thing I did find interesting is that they have an actual website. Did you guys find that? Like a website for Bigfoot sightings? It's an official website where any Bigfoot sighting you have should be reported on this registry. So they keep tracking it and maintaining it, and they have like this big complex map of the world and to track like official Bigfoot sightings. But they also have Bigfoot sound recordings. So you could submit your sound recordings. And for me, I feel like that would be a lot more difficult to prove or disprove.
Right.
Like, just the sound. You can't say anything, but here's the sound. Trust me.
I
it's
saw
a
it. I got a perfect. Yeah, there was a Bigfoot out there. I had my microphone. Thank goodness. You know, and I got this perfect recording, but I only had my cell phone camera, so it was a really blurry picture. But just sound quality is great.
Yes.
That makes sense, though, if you're out, like, people have video devices, so people are GoProing themselves, and I guess it's possible to pick up, because, you know, the sound echoes through the forest, to hear it but not see it, and, like, what the hell am I hearing? But to that same, I guess, end, it's like, how do you know that's, like, how is it, well, that's definitely a Bigfoot, guys. Like, that wailing, warbling, gorbling is a Bigfoot, because, like, that can't be anything else.
Couldn't have been a moose in heat or a bear or
a bird, a weird bird.
It's a weird bird. It's Bigfoot, guys. It was Bigfoot.
It's all Bigfoot.
So,
and big boobs.
And big boob. It's Bigfoot and big boobs making big babies.
It's big feet, guys. Big feet. Okay.
Ah, yes.
Big feet and big boobs making big babies. There. Better?
Gotta be correct on the.
But I did find it interesting on the registry website. They have, like, you can basically get registered to go on Bigfoot hunting trails. We're not going to hunt it, but just trying to spot them. And I found it interesting that 99% of these expeditions are along, like, the Appalachian Trail. All the way from Georgia up towards Massachusetts, which I found that interesting because it's like, is that where Bigfoot lives? Because that's where all of these sightings are. Is it like chicken or the egg? Are they going to the trail because, you know, that's where the most Bigfoot sightings are, or are they just like, that's a trail
that most people are on?
Yes, exactly. So it was interesting because I wasn't quite sure. And then there were two that deviated from that, though. One was in Missouri and one was in Montana. Montana made sense to me, but I wasn't quite sure how Missouri fit in there. It was just kind of like random.
Missouri kind of seems like an outcast right there.
Yeah, a little outlier.
Well, I mean, the first footage was from, 1967, and it was in Northern California, so...
Right, and the first historical record was 1904 Oregon. So it's just kind of
bouncing
there's
all over the damn place.
a wide range.
That makes sense though, because like that's all following very wooded, isolated areas.
Right.
Northern California, like you get that's more like towards like the Yosemite and the redwoods, and so that makes sense. I'm still trying to wrap my head around like how does Missouri make sense?
Yeah, I don't
Missouri doesn't make sense.
It's a pit stop on the way over.
At all.
He was trekking from Oregon to the Appalachian Trail. I don't know.
Bro was on a mission, man. I don't know.
Road trip.
Hey, he's got big feet. You know, they're probably good for walking.
Big feet and big dreams.
Heck
I
yeah.
like that. I actually really like that.
That's awesome.
What about you, Bodhi? When you hear cryptids, what do you think?
Well, I come here on a fact-finding mission, gathering material for my next novel, so I decided to dive deep into the literature and the archives and go in search of information. And I thought, there's the Loch Ness Monster. Is there a lake monster near me? I happen to live on the shore of Lake Superior in Duluth, Minnesota. And there is, in fact, a record of such a creature. So I went on the prestigious cryptids.fandom.com wiki, and I found Pressy, which
Pressy.
I find it interesting that lake monsters all have Essie in their name. You know, Loch Ness, Pressy, there's a few others.
Tessie in Lake Tahoe.
Yes, right.
There was Wessie.
They must have traded notes. They must be family members.
I think honestly that it's probably we started with the Loch Ness Monster, and then people just kind of paid homage to like lake monsters. So everybody they piggyback off of that.
Loch Ness was the OG.
Yeah, that's a good
Yup.
question. We'll have to look at the records. When was Loch Ness first recorded? Because my Pressy over here allegedly the first sighting was in the 1800s.
Ooh.
Yeah, near Duluth, no less. A man fell overboard on his yacht after hitting a rock, and he got attacked by the creature, so says he.
But when was it named? Because I think it could have been sighted around the same time, but when did they actually name this creature?
The official record is not as detailed as one would like. Perhaps it's been redacted by the powers that be.
Be naming lake monsters?
Yes. Lake Superior is technically accessible to both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. So my lake monster could come from anywhere, really.
This is true.
So, yes.
And I like that you're saying my lake monster.
Gotta rep it.
And actually, Lake Tahoe, so Tahoe Tessie, I think the first sighting was dated to be in the 19th century. So same thing, people describing snake-like creatures, long neck, humped back, swims really fast, fast enough that it can keep up with sailboats. Really weird, like people come up with different ideas and superstitions about these things because according to folklore, Tessie sightings are always more common on even-numbered years than odd-numbered years. And it's like, oh.
How strange.
Well, okay, so I guess this isn't the year. So maybe next year I'll have to head out and see if I can find that lake monster.
Yeah. You know,
There
I'm
you
not
go.
superstitious. I'm a little stitious.
I was waiting
Just
for
a
it.
little
As the
There it
inimitable
is.
Michael
Love
Scott
it.
would say.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
normal stitious.
Well, it's funny because you said, obviously Tahoe Tessie. My brain, thinking food, heard Taco Tessie. So I'm like, let's go, tacos.
Taco Tuesday.
What are y'all doing after this?
Yep.
Now I want tacos.
You're welcome.
Yes. Well, for
Oh,
a little
goodness.
transition, to take that transition south of the border, my actual favorite is El Chupacabra.
Yes.
And that is because I find the rough translation to be hilarious. The goat sucker.
Goat sucker. Yep. That's actually when I think of cryptids, that's my first thought is chupacabra. And also just because like that's what I was introduced to as a kid, like the folklore of the chupacabra. And like I didn't know that it was considered like what cryptids are and what it was. It's just like that's what I grew up being told about and taught. And for me, I'm like, oh hell no, the chupacabras were real. It's real, okay?
Yeah. I mean, for me, coming from what I write about, perhaps these are scientific experiments gone wrong. Who knows? Maybe they were scientific experiments gone right. Somebody was trying to mix a goat with a dude to figure out what would happen, and you get a goat sucker monster that kills other goats. You never know. Like
this vampire creature that hides in the trees and eats goats. You know what I find interesting is that a lot of these creatures can be found in different countries. And we've talked about this, I think, in season 1, John, where like telephone, the game of, not even telephone, so much as the names may vary by region, but people are all talking about a very similar thing.
Yes.
And especially, and it's interesting, especially back in the day when you really don't have like a computer for this information to be spreading across. So it's like, how are these things popping up around the same time, the 18th, 19th century, when we don't really have Facebook to be posting about it to spread that information? And yet they're popping up in Europe and the US, and different places are all having the same kind of creature, because there are lake monsters, dragon-like, that are talked about in probably 6th century in Japan. You have lake monsters being talked about in different countries that are snake-like, and it's like, okay, they're all seeing something very similar. And I'm not saying it's a monster snake living in a lake. Hey, that kind of rhymed. But maybe it's a monster snake living in a lake.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because, I mean, while we're on the subject of Loch Ness, I mean, Canada alone has numerous variations of their own Loch Ness, which are all ending in "-essie" and things like that, except like 1 or 2. Like, they've got so many, and I believe that there was also one somewhere near Africa as well. And so it's interesting to see that, like you're saying, these different parts around the world all have similar sightings, similar experiences. That doesn't seem like coincidence to me.
Yeah. And I mean, you see that with these different cryptids. And the same thing with like Bigfoot. So in Brazil and Bolivia, they have the Mapinguari. And you read the description and it's like, well, that's a fucking Bigfoot. Like we could, it's a tall creature covered in hair. It's huge. Theirs is like thick red fur. Although theirs is a little bit more kind of creepy because the hands have curved claws, but it very much is an ape-like creature. And it's huge and it's covered in fur. I think theirs is a little bit more creature-like because when it's approached by humans, I think you were mentioning it, Lila, or was it John, where it's like it was on all fours, but as soon as someone approached, it stood up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, well, that must be a bear. And they're like, no, that was not a bear.
Not a fucking bear, no.
So that's interesting that you have that. And like with the chupacabra, it's described one way, but then I think in Russia and the Philippines and different other countries, they have descriptions of something that it's the chupacabra. It has different names, but it's the same description. And it's like, ooh, what are we seeing? Like, what are people in these different countries seeing? Because they're seeing the same thing. And that's not to say it's like this metaphysical, supernatural creature from another dimension. But maybe there is something, scientifically speaking, out there that maybe hasn't been discovered yet or hasn't, been established yet. And so it's just like, yeah, there's this vampire goat sucker out there.
Casual. Very
Totally
casual.
Possible.
Totally
It's also
cash.
possible that there's like hallucinogens all over the planet.
I considered that when you said hallucinogens. I considered that when Lila was talking about the Mothman. And that's why I'd asked, are there recent sightings? Because within the same short amount of time, people were seeing the same thing. And then it's not to be seen again. Where were they? And what was in the area at the time that maybe they were all hallucinating off the same thing? Now that begs the question, how are they hallucinating the same thing?
Right.
Mass hallucinations do occur.
Yes.
So,
And what if it's a creature that excretes hallucinogenic fungal spores into the air? You know?
Very smelly creature.
I like that idea.
I mean, that's not far off of reality. There are plants out there that do that.
Yeah.
Yes. Speaking of a smelly creature, though, I know Lila's got the same one on here, but and I'll let her tell it. But there's the skunk ape.
So the skunk ape has been described as Florida's Bigfoot, which I just think is hilarious. But maybe that's just me. Skunk ape.
So is he really the hashtag Florida man?
Oh.
I mean, he could be. The Florida man of legend.
Yes.
Not folklore, but legend.
Legendary.
So, as it is assumed, the Florida Bigfoot was named after its pungent scent because everyone who has seen it, which the first sightings began in the 60s and 70s, said that it smelled very terrible. And it's got black fur, and again, we've got glowing red eyes. Glowing eyes, a common theme here. So in 1974, Dade County had several reports in the span of a short time. I'm not quite sure what that timeline looked like. And then in 2000, the Sarasota Sheriff's Office received 2 anonymous photos showing a large ape-like creature, which is thought to be the skunk ape. My hesitancies with this is the anonymous photos. The fact that these pictures were sent in, no context, no word, no face-to-face interaction. So it kind of begs the question of how reliable is this, and can we say that there have actually been sightings and documentation to prove the existence of this version of Bigfoot? But I don't know, what are you guys thinking?
I would think that if there were actual photographs or whatever, somebody would want credit for that.
Right.
I mean, who doesn't want to be famous for something?
Well, perhaps you think you're in on some sort of government conspiracy and you don't want to endanger you or your loved ones' lives
True.
over getting the truth out there.
Fair.
You know? And
There you go.
And the truth is out there.
There can be only so many X-Files.
yes, I want to believe.
I love that show.
If we want to talk about strange animals, we can talk about the Loveland frog, or the frog man, which I think is an interesting one. So the Loveland frog is from Loveland, Ohio, and is described as a humanoid frog that is about 4 feet tall. So the first sighting was March of 1972. Loveland police officer says that he witnessed a leathery-skinned frog-like creature crossing the road. A few weeks later, Mark Matthews, also a police officer, said that he found it laying in the road, that this frog creature tried to get up, and so he shot and killed the frog.
Oh.
Which is a bit extreme.
Yeah.
Perfect evidence, though, right?
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
where's the evidence of this?
Leathery skinned, a bipedal frog with, guess what? Glowing eyes.
Oh, yes.
Did you know, actually, before you go off of the glowing red eyes, so, that's a thing. That's not like, I think people see glowing red eyes and they think of scary monsters, rightfully so. That's like, wow, my eyes don't glow red, so that's got to be terrifying. But, there is actually a biological explanation for that. So glowing red eyes, a lot of creatures have a reflective layer in the back of their retinas called tapetum lucidum. And so when light hits it, it actually reflects back. So it could actually come across as red. So it's just to help them see better at night in low light scenarios. So we're looking at these creatures, their eyes are glowing, but chances are, what are we using to look at them? We're probably reflecting light on them in some way. So it may just be reflecting that light back with that red. So it's maybe not actually glowing versus reflecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, I feel like it's just like house cats. House cats during the dark or, you know, when you're in the dark at night, is they're terrifying to look at because you see nothing, and then you see glowing eyes, and you're like, oh, I have a cat. We're good here.
Yeah, but people do it too. You can get people's eyes to reflect light. I've done it. You've seen it in Blade Runner.
Yeah, Lila, you mentioned cats. So this past weekend I went camping and I heard a slow creeping, like a it was very intentional. It was very creeping. Something was trying to sneak up on me while I'm like stargazing at midnight outside of my tent. And I had my cell phone light. So it's not like I had a powerful flashlight, like a heavy duty one. I had my cell phone light. And I was like trying to shine it in the area that I heard the noise. And I couldn't see anything at first. I thought it was a person, honestly, from like at the campsite over trying to creep up on me. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to have to fuck somebody up. But nope, nothing. And I'm just like, okay, well, I don't know what that is. And I hear the sound kind of move across from me. So I like track my light again. And when I tracked my light in front of me, I thought I was reflecting off of somebody's headlamp at first because it was just one like thing and it was red. It was an actual red reflection. So I'm thinking I'm picking up someone's, because you know some headlamps have like the red covers over them. So I'm like, oh, I'm reflecting off of somebody's headlamp. As I think that's someone's headlamp, it turns head on. And I realized that's not a headlamp. Those are two eyes. And those are eyeballs. And it had looked red at first. When it went head on, it still looked reddish, but it's now like, no, those are eyes. Those are eyeballs. And then it moved kind of like at a diagonal, so its full body kind of came into view. And it was like, that's a big feline. That is a big kitty cat. He's a mountain lion. Like that was a mountain lion. And I could tell based on its like, it had a really long tail. Its body structure was very large, haunches, you know, the head shape. And it's just like, okay, if I didn't know what mountain lions looked like, and because, you know, I come from Colorado, like if I didn't know what mountain lions look like, and let's take that hundreds of years ago, because mountain lions aren't common they're not common in Northern California, like interactions. You're not going to see them on the daily. Most people don't see them ever in person. So it's like, okay, if I lived here hundreds or thousands of years ago and that came into my path and all I saw at night were the red eyes and this big shape, what would I think that is?
Yep. Chupacabra, skunk ape man.
Chupacabra came to eat me. I mean, granted, it's not standing up on his hind legs or it's 2 feet ape-like. So I wouldn't necessarily say humanoid, but it was reflecting red eyes. Yeah. And so if this was hundreds of years ago, I might think it's a demon. It's a demon in the form of a cat coming to eat and, you know, take my soul. So,
or it's the neighbor lady that you hate. She's a demon at night.
She's a shapeshifter.
Yes.
And when you hear about shapeshifters and like skinwalkers and stuff like that, you know, they oftentimes are described as predators, right? Like big tigers or big wolves. And it's like, maybe these are just very big wolves or mountain lions or like maybe that's actually what they are. But because they're being seen at night with the red eyes, like we give it a supernatural vibe.
All a matter of perspective.
Oh, yeah. And isn't the Chupacabra... I know that the X-Files episode, which introduced me to it, it's like a werewolf dude turns into the Chupacabra. So it's like a man thing. Like, isn't the canon lore of historical documentation, isn't it like more like a dog creature, like a four-legged thing?
It depends. Some people are like, it lives up in the trees. In Mexico, it is more of the dog creature, which is actually interesting because I think the government took it so seriously. Government's disproving it. I don't know how I feel about that. Because it's like, are they trying to make us not believe for a reason? They found that a lot of the cases that were being reported in the year that they were investigating it was actually cases of wild dogs that had very bad mange. And if you know how mange affects animals, I know Lila does, that can make something look very uncomfortably creature, demon-like, and...
very gruesome.
Yes, it's possible. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mange is a thing, and it makes them very smelly. So maybe we have some kind of creature with the skunk ape who has mange.
Yes.
And that's why they're so stinky. Because have you ever smelled mange? That's disgusting smell. Like,
So who has been killed by Bigfoot? Do we have any unsolved deaths, tramplings, bites?
I don't think I've seen anything about it.
not that I'm aware.
Honestly.
No.
Cover up for sure.
Cover up. So in Mexico, we have the doggies that are the chupacabras, the big doggies. But in the British Isles, we have the shuck. They're like big black dogs that supposedly they haunt rural towns and villages. It's like a huge doggy. Legend has it that in 1577, these dogs swarmed a church. One of the huge dogs burst through the church, killed a man, his son, and like started just destroying the church. And then it left the church. But as it left the church, it left scorch marks in the wood of the church door that can still be seen to this day. So that adds a little bit of a creepy supernatural twist, right? Because it's not just like a wild dog attack. Like this dog's paws left burn marks in the door. Which makes me wonder, why did it put its paws on the door? Was like it trying to exit it like as a person? Because you think it would just run, like if it burst through, the door was open. So unless like the door was on the ground and it stepped on it. Like I don't know how that happened.
Just Kool-Aid Man style, burst through the door.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting.
So that's interesting. I like when you hear about these cryptids and they add these like little lore twists that it's like, ooh, that's creepy. I like it. Tell me more.
Yeah. That X factor. Sprinkle that in there.
Yeah. That makes it palatable. That makes it like you want to keep that going. Versus, this dog came in to the church. Big
but
black
did he
dog.
have fire paws? That's what I want to know.
Fire paws.
I want to know.
Yeah.
One might say he dropped the door. He dropped it like it was hot.
Oh.
I feel like there are a lot of dog-like creatures. And I'm going to butcher this. So any Irish listeners, anyone from Ireland, I am so sorry for what's about to happen. So, Ireland has this otter/hound hybrid called the Duarchu. I am so sorry.
Formal apology, Ireland.
Ireland. There's a B in there, but the B is not in the pronunciation.
But like, is it less offensive if you give it like an Irish accent?
The Duarchu, yeah. Duarchu.
Yeah, so Ireland has this massive hound otter hybrid that's said to be about approximately 7 feet long. So in 1722, there was this woman named Grace Connolly, and she was washing her clothes in the lake when this massive creature jumped out of the water and mauled her to death. So her husband, Tare, saw this happen, killed the beast that did it, and this beast let out this massive cry, and it alarmed a second creature that was lurking in the water. And that creature jumped out and chased the husband off, so the husband lived to tell the tale. But after that, it just kind of goes a bit blank. So that falls into like this sighting/folklore kind of debate where can we believe that this is an actual reporting or is this more of a story? Because it goes blank until 2000 when there was a supposed sighting in a lake on Ome Island. But going from the 1700s all the way to 2000, not really any cases, not really a whole lot of evidence, any sightings or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So what happened for 300 years?
Yeah. So this is an otter thing?
Yeah, a massive otter. So it's Ireland's crocodile is also what I heard it referred to as.
Oh, wow.
So it's another furry, like, being, semi-aquatic.
How utterly atrocious.
Oh, finger guns.
Oh.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Bad joke of the day.
Bad.
So I'm half Irish, so I can say this slightly offensive thing. They say it's a massive otter, but Irish people are, historically, notoriously pretty short. So
maybe it wasn't as big as it.
It's a normal size otter, or it's just kind of a big otter.
So maybe it wasn't 7 feet.
Right.
I mean, I guess size is perspective. So, to your point, maybe it was a regular sized otter. We didn't ask how big the person was that found it. So.
That is fair. Grace,
How tall are you?
Watching this from
Yes.
beyond. How tall were
Forgive
you?
us. Do not smite us.
Ashley doesn't need any more EVPs coming through while she's editing, so.
Okay, we'll send them this way.
Grace, are you a leprechaun? Like, is a leprechaun a cryptid? Ooh.
Oh, now
Ah.
yes,
Well,
it's an animal that is alleged to exist.
And it's humanoid. It seems to be the commonality. Did you guys know that in the Philippines they have the aswang? It's like a shapeshifter, but it covers like 5 different categories of like it's an umbrella term for 5 different categories. So like a vampire-like creature, a self-segmenting viscera sucker.
Whoa.
That's a mouthful, right? That's what she said. That like that's a lot. But then also it can cover weredogs. We've talked about those. Witches and ghouls. So it seems like they're seeing a lot of the same creatures, but instead of giving each one a name, they're just like aswang. Like that's what it is. That's what we're sticking to. It all just envelops it. But I find it interesting. The ahul is like a huge ass bat. It's like 3 to 4 meter wingspan, meter tall body, but it has like people like legs. And
Batman.
it's an unclassified bat. Yes, it's a Batman. Exactly. Instead of a Hool, I'm gonna call it Bruce. So Bruce here, I guess that like what's interesting is scientists actually say that like it's plausible to exist. Like that out of all the cryptids, they're like, that might be a thing because where it's like sighted, and there aren't many sightings, but where it has been sighted is also in the part of the world where like the largest bats tend to be found anyways. So it's possible that like, hey, it's just the world's largest bat that hasn't been like fully caught, documented, or whatever yet.
Sure.
With people legs.
Yeah, the flying foxes are huge, and right? Is that what they're called? Those like the largest bats?
Yeah.
Flying foxes? Or that might just be their like fun name.
It's their fun name. Their common name.
Yeah.
Their
Yeah, their
nickname.
We all have nicknames. So yeah, I think that's interesting. To your point, Lila, though, about like why are the sightings so spaced out? Like that's a long time to not see these things. But for me, I almost think like that's more disturbing because one section of sightings, like to Bodhi's point, maybe hallucinogenics in the environment. But like when it's hundreds years later or thousands, like, hey, here it comes again. It's like, whoa, where were you this whole time?
Waiting.
And is there more of you that we haven't seen? Or like more types of creatures that are maybe living beneath the surface or somewhere else that we just don't know about yet? I'm going to scare myself.
Yeah, these are the questions that keep me up at night.
Keep you writing all your awesome novels.
Mm-hmm.
And like the skeptic in me, the science person, I'm not going to call myself a scientist, but the person who lends themselves to more scientific theories than I do like the supernatural theories. I think about just, we go back to like people arrogance. We think we know every animal and creature out there, but everything is a cryptid in theory. If we're going off of just definition, everything is a cryptid until we name it, right? Until we find the bones, we find it alive, and we name it. But even realistically, we don't have to find it alive. Because last I checked, we didn't find the dinosaurs alive, and we have lots of names for them. So
Bones, too. Pictures,
bones.
Yeah.
Yes. And so until we find like skeletons of these things and we give a classification and a name to it, then it's like, okay, that's real. And so that's okay. But it's like, these cryptids might be real, might be creatures that are few and far between that we just haven't found bones of or named them yet. I don't know.
And if I was a funny looking, furry, stinky dude off in the woods, I wouldn't want to join humanity. I'd want to stay hidden as long as I could. If I was a cuddly little 7-foot otter monster, I would hide for 1,000 years, 2,000 years. I don't blame
Otter
them
monster.
for being so well hidden. People suck.
I don't know if it's cuddly.
I mean, it did maul this woman to death, and its mate did try to
Supposedly.
maul the husband. Supposedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
You know what? I'd like to believe in the however you want to pronounce that.
Right.
However you want.
Ireland's crocodile.
And I struggle with the mammal creatures, the mammalian land creatures, being hidden as long as they have, given how advanced our technology and tracking has become. I struggle with that being like, okay, they're out there. It's still plausible, but it becomes a little bit more difficult because, like, to stay hidden in this day and age, even if you're off the grid, when you're specifically looking for something like Bigfoot. When it comes to the water ones, or like the ones living in deep caves, that makes more sense because we don't really do a lot of exploration in those areas. There's only so far we can go. And so it's just like, okay, that makes sense. Maybe there's some creatures in the bottom of the ocean or in sections of water we haven't explored yet, or in deep caverns that we just haven't gotten to yet because there's absolutely zero light. Like, that makes sense. Okay. We barely just recently discovered within the past few years that way deep down in the belly of the earth in caves are creatures that have evolved, which totally makes sense, without eyeballs, without the need for anything like that. And it's like, okay, that sounds creepy. We've seen movies that play off of that where people are like, yeah, there's these creepy creatures with no eyes. Ooh. And then we find out, oh, hey, that's real because they don't biologically need it. Not as scary.
Yeah.
Okay. So the water stuff, like the lake monsters and the cuddly otter, cuddly
Of
7-foot
death.
otter.
The death
Yes,
otter.
otter of death. That makes a little bit more sense that they could be very real and we just haven't been able to explore where they maybe come from. But Bigfoot, I have a hard time with.
Well, if you go with the water thing, you got turtles and you got whales, and we have a lot of trouble tracking them and seeing their whole lifespan and where they go when they're not terrestrial or close to the shore. So, say Bigfoot, his fur coat is really like an otter fur, you know, like he has fur the same reason an otter has fur, or a seal. And that's just like the once in a 1,000 years he comes to land. And Bigfoot's actually an amphibious creature that just has a whole lot more time in the water than we're used to.
That's a theory.
Hey, that could be because we're, like you said, we're basically blind in the water.
Yeah, we are. And I mean, we are blind to caves too. Like, if Bigfoot's this cave dwelling and he only comes out occasionally because he lives so far in, like, that would make sense. What if he is a cave creature versus a woods creature? And so he lives deep in mountains and there's animals in there to subsist, like, he can live off of. So it's like, maybe. Maybe we just don't see him because he's living in areas we don't venture to. We as humans don't really go into these caves unless we're mining them. So that might explain it too. The water, if he's a water creature though, and he's hairy and he's man-like, would he be more like a mermaid?
Maybe he is what they were talking about. Those sailors of old, you know, they saw furry Bigfoot,
They saw Bigfoot.
big boobs, and they were like,
Big boobs.
that's the woman of my dreams.
That's a mermaid. Merboobs.
There you go. There you go.
We're just trying to explain it. I mean, right now we got our alleged facts, and we're trying to fill in the gaps. You know.
Well, I mean, I think about the 7 creatures that used to be cryptids, considered not real, and people thought, like, there's no way they could be real. And, like, the Komodo dragon, that was one of them. They had to go bring back live ones for people to believe, like, that was a real thing. The platypus.
Which, if you've ever seen a Komodo dragon, they're massive lizards. You don't want to bring those things back. They're mean.
I know. Exactly. And the platypus. But the one, because we're talking about a lot of creatures that are like, they sound like a mixture of creatures, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, science experiment or not real. But there is actually the okapi, the forest giraffe. That looks like a zebra, donkey, deer, and antelope all mixed together.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. And they're so cute.
Yeah, and it's real. But people, it was really hard to prove them real because they're rarely seen, like Bigfoot. But they're real. They exist. And yeah.
The thing that's kind of the nail in the coffin of cryptids is they're all like horribly scary, except for the ones that turn out to be real, like this little ferret creature with a duck bill. Like, it's not gonna hurt anybody, you know. Nobody believed that, yeah, this thing was gonna have a duck bill with fur and 4 legs and lay eggs, but it turned out to be real. But everybody else, all these cryptids are like, they're man-eaters. You know, they're scary.
Only a few of them. Because think about all the ones we've talked about. Like, the Loch Ness Monster and all of those lake monsters. Like, we have giant squids. Why can't we have giant water snakes? And the giant squid was a cryptid up until, like in Japan, there were a few sightings and they were actually able to find a giant squid. So it's like giant lake monsters sound terrifying. And I think that's what it is. They're scary, and people put these scary connotations onto them because they don't know how to process it. So like, mangy dog, you're a goat sucker. Maybe they were eating the goats in their area, but I don't think they were draining them of their blood like in this like supernatural ritualistic demon manner. And the same thing with skinwalkers, right? We've talked about skinwalkers before, where it's like animals are being found mauled, dead, like completely just eaten up. And it's like, well, maybe you just have very mangy animals or rabid animals going at other animals. And because we don't know how to explain it, we put these like very scary concepts onto it because religion, right? A lot of people view things through their religious lenses, and they're like, it's a demon. It's the devil. I know it's the devil. And so it's just like, okay, it was the devil. Its eyes were red. Well, now with science, we know why things reflect red light. But no, it was a demon. Lucifer was there. I saw him.
The devil.
So I don't. It's the devil.
It's the devil.
I saw Goody Proctor dancing
Exactly.
with
Exactly. So that darn goody. But I dance with the devil too. Just kidding.
Yeah, I liked meeting your Appalachian personality there. That was fun.
Oh, wait, thank you. I'm preparing to go meet Bigfoot and Big Boob.
There you go.
Just one? Just
Yep.
one big boob.
Just one big
Just one big
uniboob.
boob, not two.
That's scary. There you go. It fits.
Events,
That's
these are
very
supposed to be
scary.
scary things. So, because yeah, I mean, we have the less
But-
scary cryptids. Like, yes, we're talking about the more scary ones because those are fun in my opinion. They're more fun, and I think that's why people do it. It's not a conscious thing, but I think people put scary things onto them because it does spike our adrenaline. It does like thrill us. That's just like people going to like to go into haunted houses and during Halloween. It's like people like to be scared.
Except for Ashley.
I don't do real haunted houses. Or wait, I guess I don't do fake ones either because I accidentally punch people. But realistically, unless you give me 5 shots of Fireball, if you don't know what I'm talking about, visit season 1. But
Season 1.
Yep, exactly.
There you go.
Episode 2, in fact.
yeah, John knows all the episodes. He's got it down. I love it.
Well, and I mean, there are like very scary cryptids, but listen, I don't find a humanoid frog to be scary. The Jersey Devil, though.
Ooh, nice segue.
I mean, you did mention the devil. The devil.
It was the devil.
I was holding on to that segue. I really.
I like the segue. Tell us about the Jersey
Yes.
Devil.
Described as a flying kangaroo-like creature with either a horse or a goat head. It has leathery bat-like wings, horns, small arms like a T-Rex. I added the T-Rex part. Legs with hooves and a forked tail.
Wow.
What in the holy hell?
What a great question.
That is,
I was trying to visualize that.
Look it up.
Look it up. There's
Look it up.
pictures.
Horror
there's
collage.
pictures.
It's not. Yeah, it's like someone just got very drunk and said, "We'll just move this here, put this. This is a good picture. This here."
No, I think someone got very mushroom tripped there because
Or
playing back
that.
into my
But
theory.
in the 1700s?
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry,
Right.
wild mushrooms. You think that the hallucinogenic
Okay, yes.
mushrooms just
No,
occurred?
right.
Psilocybin's been around.
Right.
Everything is edible once,
That is
at
true.
least.
Including people.
Oh, coming through with the
Oh,
horror there.
I was thinking mushrooms.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, she took down a whole other...
Mushrooms, people, whatever.
You know, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Not.
They're both meaty. But
But I'm not going to put people on a pizza.
Oof.
why not?
I mean, don't knock it till you try it.
You wouldn't put mushrooms on a pizza either. You hate mushrooms.
You're right.
Anyway.
But going back to the whole Jersey Devil there. So this lady, her name was Mother Leeds. She had 12 kids After finding out she was pregnant again, she cursed the 13th child, saying, "This child's gonna be the devil.
Devil.
Because your other 12 weren't? Like, what the hell? Plus, keep your legs closed. Gross."
Hey, no
Just
sex
saying,
shaming.
12 kids?
It takes
No, but 12
there's
kids.
two parties involved in that.
Thank you,
True.
Bodhi. Thank you.
It
Keep
was
it
the
in your pants.
17th century.
And keep your Peter in your pants.
You tell him.
Yeah, get him.
Otherwise, you'll have the devil.
You'll have 13 children.
But it was like in 1735, she gave birth to a normal child. She had friends over to kind of, witness and help with the birth and all of that fun stuff. But then all of a sudden, the child changed into the creature that we just described. And as it was flopping around, it beat everybody with its tail and flew up the chimney and just gone.
Out the out.
Out the out.
Out the fucking out.
That's a hell of a way to make an entrance and an exit.
Yeah.
Right?
And what I think is interesting about that is that there's different variations on the story. So
Yes.
some say that Mother Leeds, whose name was thought to be Deborah, was killed by the child. Some say she was spared. Some say that the midwife was killed instead. It really just depends on what variation that you read. So the gist of the story is there, but I think that the storytelling has changed over the past few centuries.
Right.
I mean, that's any story, right? Like, as time goes, the story's going to change.
Yeah, of course. But in, around 1820, and I think this is just funny because of the name, I didn't know Napoleon had a brother, but apparently he did, and his name was Joseph. He was the elder brother of Napoleon. He claimed to see the Jersey Devil while hunting in his on his border town estate around 1820.
Wow.
And my only takeaway, of course, was Joseph.
Joseph, just anticlimactic
name?
after Napoleon. Yeah.
Yeah, after
It's not
Napoleon.
the same.
Yeah.
And he was the older one, right?
Yeah, he was
That's
the older
gonna
one.
suck.
Sadly,
That
that was my
hurts.
takeaway from that. But we're gonna name you Joseph, but then Napoleon,
Yeah.
It's been Napoleon.
not Dynamite.
But I'm willing to bet Joseph got the height.
Yeah, because Napoleon, obviously. Yeah, we all know about that.
He
little
was
dude.
not a leprechaun.
He was a French leprechaun.
Speaking of leprechauns, so we are talking about cryptids, and it's like not all of them are scary, man-eating, pizza-inhabiting cryptids. Like, we have things that are on the nicer end, like that, or the more like fantastical and magical ends, because we have unicorns. Those are cryptids.
Ah, yes.
Some people do believe they're unicorns. Some people have claimed to have found bone structures of horses with horns, and it's just like, if I had to go with what I know about biology, I would say that's probably real. Not like unicorns being a species of their own, but like I think about people that are born with bone structures of like a tail, or bone structures. You can be born with deviations than the typical genetic structure that we see. So it's possible that some horses are born with that bone structure kind of protruding, that bony structures in their head. So maybe that's a thing. Unicorns might be a thing. When we start to get so deviated, though, where we get like the Pegasus, where like, hey, this horse has wings, it can fly, then it's like,
It had Red Bull.
okay, maybe they're bone structure, but I don't think so.
Somebody will find a story
Yes.
in the history of cryptids. I'm sure somebody's got a tale.
Sorry.
It took my brain a second, and I was like, hang on.
They have a tail. They have a tail.
And a horn.
I mean,
And
that's the other thing. We're talking about a lot of these are like humanoid, right? A lot
Yeah.
of them. And all I can keep circling back to is the old school carnivals, the old school circuses, and people with like webbed feet, and people with, because I think we talked about the one that has like the snake skin, or like the frog skin, the amphibian skin, and it's just like, maybe these things are real, these anthropoid creatures. And like Bodhi said, well, if I look like that, I wouldn't want to be around people either. So it's just like, maybe these creatures are real. They are people born with, again, this like genetic misalignment, and they're being hidden back. Like, because would you show off your baby with like snake skin? I might, because I think that's pretty fucking cool. But maybe not. Most people probably would not. So is it possible? I think when you have stuff where it's one-offs, like this one creature or the Jersey Devil, you know, this one creature that looks like this, maybe it was a person that was born with these genetic deformities. But when you have like Bigfoot, like I am seeing, like people see Bigfoot everywhere and he's all over the place. Like it's either he's traveling everywhere, like he's a sightseeing boy, or
He's on tour.
Yes, he's on tour. Bigfoot's on tour.
Worldwide.
Yeah. Or maybe there is some kind of species.
Parallel thinking. I think people really, when it comes down to it, the animal we're most scared of is ourselves. 2 legs, 2 arms, bigger than us. Maybe, you
That's
know,
what she said.
furrier. Oh God, furrier than us. You know, yeah, and some of them might be real. You never know. In Appalachian Trail, there can be some of those backwoods families that have been doing their thing for generations that we don't want to speak about.
Just don't take the wrong turn.
Right.
The hills
Yep.
have eyes.
Stay well, and then there's radiation. You never know. There's lots of explanations.
Yeah. Well, and the thing with that is I think certain cryptids, certain folklore, legends, whatever you want to call them, they cause curiosity, whereas others cause hysteria. So going back to the Jersey Devil, in 1909, there were several reports, and within like a relatively close time span, again, we're seeing that common theme. And it got to the point where schools and work mills got shut down because people were so scared to leave and see this creature because they were hearing these cries that were just unearthly and seeing these big old creatures swoop down, and livestock was being slaughtered when, you know, they shouldn't have been, like on the farms, things like that. And maybe that could be just attributed to like a wild animal, like a fox getting into a hen house, you know, things like that. But it's gotten to the point where in that time period, people were so scared that the world kind of stopped. Whereas we hear cases about Bigfoot or Loch Ness and people get excited. They want to know what's going on. So it's kind of like, where is that line drawn where, oh, this one we're interested in, but this one we're going to be scared of?
I think it's based on the carcasses. If they're attributing these creatures to carcasses, like, well, we haven't found these mauled, you know, ripped apart, bloody sites next to Bigfoot sightings. Like, we're less afraid.
Right.
But when it's attributed to, like, all of these animal deaths, livestock deaths, and stuff like that, then I could see, like, ooh, that's scary. I could see that being a fear established thing. I do sometimes think that folklore kind of takes off on its own and creates this hysteria, because you saw that with the chupacabra. It was one sighting with some dead goats, and then it became everyone's terrified, and it's all these livestock deaths are being attributed to this folklore. So it's almost like misattributing things. Like, okay, well, my cow died too. It was the chupacabra. And it's just, and then it spirals and it becomes bigger. And like, yeah, I saw it too. Wait, I saw it too. And it's just like, maybe they thought they saw it, or because it's out there and it's impressionable, people are going to associate every little thing that's startling them to what's being said in that moment. So like, I did see something weird creeping through the forest. It was the chupacabra. I know it was. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's less scary when you think you know what it is.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Folklore is more culturally based, so it has like a cultural background. So I think that's relevant and should be taken into consideration. Like when we're talking about the chupacabra, how this is in a certain culture, how this is in a certain area, and it's not as widespread as, say, these lake quote unquote monsters are, where they're being found everywhere. It's very centered, which I don't know. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that just looking, I like to look at the cryptids and how they're being described in different areas, because I feel like that's when you start to pull out the patterns. symptoms? What are people seeing? What are they saying is happening? And then pull away the folklore from it. So like big dogs or mangled corpses are being found, or just trying to find what is the commonality, what's the common thread with all of these? What are people seeing? And then maybe then apply, okay, what could that be? That really does require, though, pulling out the folklore, pulling out the lens of superstition and hysteria, and just like, what are they saying that they're seeing without all of that bias and like impression on it? What are they saying they see? What are they finding? Because maybe there is something there and not something supernatural, because everything is supernatural until we prove it, right? Everything is magic until we prove it. So
You're going
realistically,
Dana Scully on us.
I am. Thank you. I take that as like a compliment. But
As you
so I
should.
think everything's possible to an extent, just depending on what it's doing. Does it follow our laws of gravity and physics as we know it, that everything has to apply to here? And then from there, it's a free for all. Maybe it could be possible. I'm not going to say it is. I'm not going to say it's real or proven, but maybe it could be possible. And with that said, do we have any last thoughts about cryptids, my friends?
You gave me nightmare material. It works for me.
You're welcome.
Murderous otters.
So if you wake up screaming at night, remember my name.
Yes, I wake up most nights thinking about Ashley. Screaming, of course.
What?
Of course.
Wait, am I screaming or you're screaming?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I mean, you said
Matter of
it.
perspective.
Like,
It's captured on tape forever.
oh man, that was funny. Okay.
The world may never know.
The world may never know. We're going to leave it in the privacy of your bedroom. Okay. What about... I can't even.
We'll never know.
I can't function.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Murderous otters.
Cuddly murderous otters.
Yes.
Cuddly, 7 feet.
7 feet
Possibly.
cuddly.
Possibly.
Possibly.
Possibly. We still don't know the height of the person that was mauled. But
Right. Grace.
How much beer was
Grace.
involved?
Grace.
How many
Yes.
shrooms
Right.
were involved? These are all important.
how many wild
things.
mushrooms were
Yeah.
eaten in the forest?
There you go.
Maybe the otter had rabies. Who knows? But
Mange.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Scurvy.
Okay.
Murderous otters.
Murderous otters.
Murderous otters.
That's what she said.
I think the important takeaway from this is that we can't just look at photographs and hear possible audio clips from a Bigfoot and say, yes, this is fact, which I don't think that a lot of people do. Just kind of figuring out what's plausible, what could these cryptids actually be? Are they actual creatures, or can we debunk them? Because I feel like a lot of being in the scientific field is disproving rather than proving. So I don't personally think that a 4-foot humanoid frog is plausible. I don't think that its body structure can support the weight, support the structure of being bipedal, of being that large. So it's just taking in a sense of realism. Can this happen? Can this body support this type of lifestyle? Things like that. And just taking into a bigger perspective, okay, what can't this be versus what can this be? I think is a very important distinction.
And I'm going to challenge you that I think that's what's wrong with our science currently, is we are in the business of disproving versus proving, which I think is what lends towards the supernatural explanations and the prevalence of like people getting hysterical. I think if we could come to the table a little differently with that shift of not necessarily proving like, yes, this exists as it is, but more so like, okay, what could this be? What is it that people are seeing? Because, for example, like the frog person who is not maybe able to skeletal-wise support its structure, but it's maybe not proving that that's a species. Maybe, again, that's a deformity. That is an exception. So maybe his body doesn't support that, but maybe he still is real. We see, even in humans, babies born every day with like necks that can't support their head structure, or with linked arms or covered in fur more than they usually are. Because all babies are born with a layer of hair. So it's just like there are things that happen that are deviations. And so maybe what we're seeing when some of these creatures come along are deviations from the standard. And so maybe just as our science grows, maybe instead of let's disprove anything that's not what we already know, because how do we grow if we're just this is what we know and this is hard facts. Instead being like, okay, what could this be? Maybe it's something we don't know. Mm-hmm. And if after, at the end of the day, we've done our experiments and we've done what we can, it's still like, yeah, that's not plausible, then that's what we say. Yeah, that's not plausible. But just automatically, I think assuming is what gets us into trouble in our science. That's why the paranormal isn't taken seriously. That's why the supernatural isn't taken seriously. Because we're like, nope, we already know what we know. So that can't be real.
Yeah.
I think if we broaden that scope a bit and say, maybe we just don't know, let's try and figure it out, that might help. I don't know. And then we're less likely to say, it's the devil.
I can respect the challenge because I think as important as it is to disprove things in the scientific field, I think it is important to weigh your options and don't eliminate any possibilities until you know that you can and until you have that evidence or you have that data to support you. So I can respect the challenge.
Oh, thank you. What about you, John? Any last thoughts?
I already gave my last thoughts.
Murderous otter.
Murderous otter.
Okay. Well, a murderous otter. That's right. So thank you so much, Lila and Bodhi, for coming on. We appreciate you coming on to the show so much. This was such a great episode. Bodhi, what projects or things would you like to plug before we end?
Yes, well, I like having a balance of skepticism and openness, and I deal in the realm of imagination, and I love to create creatures in my mind and put them to paper. So on that note, you can find my novel, North Port 1999, exclusively on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Bodhi the Movie Maker. You can learn more about that book that I wrote a screenplay on that just got selected. See whether or not I won an award, because I will have or will not have by the time you hear this, at bodhiwerner.com. And thank you
so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been spooktacular, crazy fun. Can't wait to see some interesting things in my dreams. Won't let you know if it's a nightmare or not. Screaming will for sure be involved.
Oh my word.
Goodness. I thought you were going to be the one doing the raunchy jokes, but it turns out I took your place.
Yes, I love this. I love when I'm not the only one. Well, thank you both so much for coming on to the episode. This was a great time. John, bring us home.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning into 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And thank you again to our special guests. And for any of our listeners, if you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to our social medias. You don't want to miss one crazy moment.
Until next time.